All right, so let's go ahead and finish section 4. So we just talked about why unions are on the decline. So this gives you the basic graph where you can see what's happening, that dotted line to all unions over time. You definitely see a decline in the membership of unions. All right, let's look at why women still are paid less than men for working in our economy. So let's look at the reasons. First reason, human capital difference. And basically, this goes back to what we discussed about labor grades. Human capital is investment in yourself and your skills and education. So part of the reason women are paid less is they have a gap versus men when it comes to skill set and education and also experience. The experience gap tends to come from women leaving the workforce to take care of their families, so they lack the same experience. Another reason women receive less pay than men is gendered occupation. Women tend to jobs that don't pay as much than men. Men tend to jobs that a lot of times are more stressful, are more dangerous, and as a result, they're paid more. Another reason for women receiving less pay than men is there's still discrimination, where um, you have concepts like the glass ceiling, where a woman or even a minority group, they can see that job, they can see what it would take to be a CEO or a CFO of a company, but that glass ceiling is the discrimination that still exists in our society. Although it has been decreasing over time, it still does exist, and there still tends to be a bias towards men in the workplace. This chart shows you how much women make as a percentage of men. The field where we see women and men earning the closest amount would be in construction. Women make almost 92% of that which men make. The worst that you see on this chart would be in finance and insurance and even in real estate, that women only make about 55% of what men make. So this looks at female to male earning ratios, where you can see the woman down towards the bottom does not make as much as a man. And this goes to the explanation of why women make less than men, is they tend to go into fields that don't offer as high of pay. So this chart shows you which jobs tend to be the most female, and then what is their average, this is across the nation, not in Orange County, how much they make. So you can see that the jobs they tend to do not make that much money. If you look at the male jobs, where we see the most men heading into these type of jobs, you'll notice that they do pay as a whole higher than the female jobs. There are ways our government has tried to remedy wage discrimination to promote more equal wages. So the first ones are the laws that do this. The first one would be the Equal Pay Act, and this is exactly what it says, that a employer cannot discriminate wage and salary based on sex or minority status. Then we have the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which you probably remember from your U.S. history classes and the Title VII programs, where those of you who have ever filled out any type of an application for a job, you will notice at the bottom, it does say that the employer does not discriminate on the basis of gender, race, color, religion, and national origin, and that makes them in compliance with the Civil Rights Act. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission is the group that is responsible for enforcing these laws in business. Other than laws, there are other ways that we can try to promote more equal wages. The first one is comparable worth. This one's difficult to do. What is done with this comparable worth is we try to figure out two different jobs, one that is held by a man and one that's held by a woman, and deciding which two jobs are equally demanding, though they're different. So you can kind of see why this would be difficult, because opinions are going to get in the way. And some people are saying, no, that job is more demanding because as a maybe as a fireman or a policeman, where you see more men, that it's more dangerous. So it is more demanding of them, as opposed to saying, okay, what job that a woman holds more likely is equal to that of being a fireman or a policeman. So that one doesn't is very difficult. The next way to try to correct and have more equal pay for all different groups in society would be set aside contracts. And the government in this case would reserve the contract for a minority group, either a company owned by women or a company owned by African Americans, or a company owned by um, a, a Asian American. One of the last things you read in the book, or this chapter, is the section on part-time workers. We are noticing that the number of part-time workers over time is going up, and you read various reasons, from the flexibility it allows the businessman to be able to fill various slots, maybe very odd times, or to have more workers during the busiest times. It also allows flexibility for the employee if maybe they are trying to only work when their kids are at school, or they're trying to go to college and want to hold a job at the same time. Another reason we see part-time work increase also is it's very expensive to have full-time workers. The implication is if the worker is full-time, then the employer is going to have to offer benefits, and benefits are extremely expensive. So if the employer can have more part-time employees, it's cheaper for them because they don't have to pay those part-time workers any type of benefits. Minimum wage, you might remember from your US history classes, really started during the Industrial Revolution to prevent workers from being exploited by their employer. So over time, it has changed, and there are reasons that the minimum wage is a good thing. There are reasons that minimum wage is a bad thing. A good reason to keep our minimum wage is to protect our workers, who would be our unskilled workers that still need an income, because they don't have a lot of investments in human capital. They don't command a lot of money because everybody has that skill set. So the minimum wage stops them from being taken advantage of and giving them the income that they need to survive. And a con, um, when it comes to minimum wage, is it really takes away economic freedom from the employer. The government dictates what he must or she must pay their workers, rather than what they think that they deserve. Some of you might also be aware that a negative too behind minimum wage is the potential for inflation, that the more that minimum wage goes up, employers have to make up that money somehow, so they oftentimes will raise the cost of their products. All right, so that concludes section 4, and we'll meet back up when we start our banking section.